Thanks so much for tuning in to A Greater Story with Sam Collier. My name's Sam Collier, and I am here right now in an awesome moment. It's been a long time coming. I am with the Vice President of High Performance Leadership here at Chick-fil-A, but he's not just that. I kind of feel like you do that on the side. I'm just kidding. You do a lot.
Don't tell Chick-fil-A I do that on the side.
No, you don't. But some of the other things that he does is he's one of the greatest leadership coaches in our world today. You've been all around the world training leaders. You've sold over 1 million books. We've got your new one right here, Win the Heart, How to Create a Culture of Full Engagement. Mark Miller is here, ladies and gentlemen. He's an international best-selling author. How are you?
Oh, I'm delighted to be with you.
Gosh,
it has been a long time coming. I mean, I've been a fan of yours since before you were anybody. I mean, way back. I mean, the first time I met you, I said, that man is going to do great things. You know where we were? I think we were in Charlotte, weren't we?
I know we were. We were in Charlotte. That's where we were.
And I said, I got to get to know this guy.
Yeah.
And so that was 5 years ago, probably.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm going to tell some stories today. You may try to stop me, but I got to let the world know how incredible you are. Before we jump in, we kick off this show every time with the song. What's one of your favorite groups right now?
Well, we just came back from a little gathering of 7,000 of our friends.
Just a little.
And
I was there. It was incredible.
And we had Hillsong Worship. So they're on my heart and mind right now. They did a fantastic job for us.
I want to play the new Hillsong United song. It's called Good Grace. We'll be back.
Remember where I am, 'cause
So I don't know where it was. I think it might have been Charlotte. But we met through Billy Bowie, and you were training some leaders on some incredible stuff, and Randy Gravitt was there with you.
Right.
And I remember talking to you and just thinking, who is this man?
Others have had similar questions.
Right,
who is this guy?
I'm like, who is this? He's incredible. And then you started telling me more. And here's what was incredible to me. I didn't know exactly who you were. I knew you were important in my language, right? But you treated me like you had known me my whole life. And that was huge for me because I was just getting started. Like you said, I was just getting started in this world, trying to find my voice, trying to find my way. That grows a little bit, and we keep knowing each other. I started a nonprofit, and we started helping some kids in the inner city. And I have to tell this story because this story is, I'll never forget this story. And I got to tell the world, now that I got you here, I got to tell the world what you've done. We worked in some of the lowest income areas in Atlanta and in the greater Atlanta areas. And we had about 700 kids, not 800, that chose to perform above excellence. It was maybe about 70% that we had an increase of students just, we told them we'd throw them a party, give them some food. Well, we had a sponsor pull out last minute. We have any money to pay for 700 kids. I mean, food, drinks, all that. You in Africa, and I sent you a text message, and you know the story, and I said, hey, and it was really a long shot for me. It was a Hail Mary. I was like, what, oh my gosh. And you stopped what you were doing.
I was asleep. I was in Africa. It was the middle of the night, but that's okay. Keep telling your story. Keep telling your story.
You woke up, next thing I know, you said it's all been paid for. 700 kids, Chick-fil-A sandwiches, sweet tea, lemonade, fries, and what was even more incredible is that you paid for it yourself. I mean, that's when I knew, I said, man, this man, who are you? I mean, but wait, before you tell me who you are, I want to tell a little bit more. I mean, you've been at Chick-fil-A so many years. I'll let you tell the story. You've sold over 1 million books. You're somebody that people want to be like. Take us from little Mark up to where you are now. Tell us the story, because there are people listening in going, how can I become that?
Well, be careful what you wish for. But I had a normal childhood, loving parents, a brother and a sister who we got along probably better than we should. God has been gracious.
Right.
And I don't have any nightmares or horror stories. Very supportive, very loving family. And from that platform, I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life.
Yeah.
And I was, as it turns out, the first member of my family to go to college. Neither of my parents had gone, and even my aunts and uncles had not gone. And it was my dad who challenged me and encouraged me when he came home from work one day and he'd been passed over for a job that he was qualified for by any measure, but he did not have a college degree. And I was in high school, and we'd never even talked about college. Right. But he walked in and said, "You're going to probably need to consider going to college." And I said, "Okay, there's a new thought. Tell me more, Dad." I mean, we never discussed it. I mean, and as I recall, I was probably in 10th or 11th grade. That just wasn't something we talked about. It just wasn't part of our family and our history. And he told me the story about not getting that job, and that he felt, and I would even argue to this day, he was qualified for. And he said, that's the only reason I didn't even get an interview, he said, because I didn't have a college education. And so it was that moment I said, well, I guess I need to go to college. So that was kind of one of my defining moments from my teen years. And then I ended up working in a Chick-fil-A restaurant in the summer before college. Yeah. And I was awful in the restaurant. I mean, awful.
What do you mean when you say awful? What does that mean?
I'm talking about we actually fillet the chicken before we prepare it. Yeah. And it should be done in just a few minutes. It'd take me about a week to prepare a pan of chicken. And so I just knew that was not my future. The only reason I'd gone there is my brother was a team leader, and I figured I could get a job there. And I did, but only lasted about 6 months.
Wow.
And I quit before I got fired, which is my strategy.
It's like,
don't hang around until I'm fired. And I ended up coming to the home office and applying for a job, which made perfect sense to me as a kid. If I can't work in the restaurant, maybe I could work at the home office. I had no idea what I was thinking. But I walked into the receptionist and I told her I'd like to have a job working in your warehouse. I knew enough to know they had a warehouse. And so she said, have a seat. Just a few minutes later, Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, came out, took me into his office to conduct the interview. Now you're probably thinking, as many of your listeners are going, that's just bizarre. Why would the head of a multi-billion-dollar company be interviewing a punk to work in the warehouse? Right. Well, as it turns out, over 40 years ago, this was not a multi-billion-dollar organization. I learned that I was interviewing to be the 16th corporate employee.
Wow.
And I tell people, God's grace and his lack of discernment, Truett's lack of discernment, he gave me a job working in the warehouse.
Right, you just took a chance.
And that started my Chick-fil-A career. And so I ended up going to school at night, got my degree, but I was working here during the day.
What?
And so that's kind of how I got in the door.
And so how do you go from that to being here 40 years, being a vice president, the vice president of high performance leadership in 1 million books, and you've almost spoken on every continent in the world? I mean, tell us that. We have to know.
Well, I don't have any logical or human explanation for that. I've tried to be faithful to the opportunities that have come my way. I would tell you there was a pivotal moment though, and it happened almost 40 years ago. I think it was one of the defining moments in my life.
Yeah.
When Dan Cathy, Truett's son, who's now our CEO,
right?
But back then he was not the CEO. And when I worked in the warehouse, I didn't report to Dan. But 6 months after I joined the staff, I moved out of the warehouse and started our corporate communications group, which is another strange and bizarre story for another day. And so I reported to Dan. Again, there are only 16 people here.
Right.
But it was early in my time with Dan that he convinced me that my capacity to grow would determine my capacity to lead.
Tweetable moment.
And that was like, okay, then I'll commit to lifelong learning. Now, my parents wish I'd committed earlier because I was a lousy student. But Dan just said, this is the way the world works. Your capacity to grow determines your capacity to lead. Now, and so even as I tell that story today, I've had leaders as recently as last week say to me, you mean if I grow, I'll get more opportunity? I said, not necessarily. I said, you'll be ready. Woo. I said, we control our readiness. We don't control our opportunities.
You are snapping.
So I want to be ready
Yeah.
when the coach says, we need you. right? Because if you're not ready, the coach isn't going to need you. And so Dan helped me see that over 40 years ago. And so it's not my natural instinct. It's not my natural bias. It's not the way I'm wired.
Yeah.
I just made a choice. I said, if this is the way the world works, I'm going to make a commitment to lifelong learning. And so I think it's that learning that has kind of enabled me to do a lot of things across the business. I mean, I've really had trouble holding down a job. And part of it, we were so small back then, it was let the kid do it. I'd do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I started the corporate communications deal, Dan Cathy came to me right after I started and said, can you help me with a project? And my job was working in the warehouse, and we were shipping parts to operators who needed it to keep their equipment and their restaurants running.
Operators are owners, for those that
right.
don't know.
And so I remember telling Dan, I said, well, I think I'm busy, all right? I'm supposed to be shipping these things to operators. And Dan said, well, what are you doing at the end of the day? I said, well, I'm going to school.
Right.
And he said, well, what are you doing after school? I said, nothing. He said, what time you get out of class? I said, about 10 o'clock tonight. He said, I'll meet you back here at 10:30. And so my first extracurricular project was helping Dan produce our annual meeting.
Wow.
Which is
now
now called Next.
Yeah.
There's, 7,000 folks there almost this year.
It's beautiful.
And so it was me helping him with that. And about 6 months later, he just pulled me out of the warehouse and said, you're going to help with this on an ongoing basis. So this was my 40th annual event that we just completed.
I know we talked about how you've kind of risen in the ranks, but if we could pull the curtain back a little bit more, I'm thinking about folks that are in a corporate environment, they're listening to this, they're going, we love Chick-fil-A, we've read your books. Talk to us about how you walk your way up an organization to where you are now. How did that happen? Was that faithfulness?
Yeah,
Was that?
I don't know that you walk your way up. I hope that doesn't discourage a lot of people. I mean, I'll go back to what I said a moment ago.
Yeah.
We control our readiness. We don't control our opportunities. And I think you've got to make yourself ready and make yourself available and look for ways to serve. The men and women who tend to be recognized with more opportunity, at least in my experience, are those that are adding value in their current role. And you can sense they're looking for additional ways to add value. It's not lost on me that had I not chosen to give that extra effort 40 years ago, things might have turned out differently. But I was just willing to serve, and if that's what they needed me to do, that's what I was willing to do.
Wow.
Now, some people would say, well, that's generational. Your generation was just crazy like that. Right? Young people aren't going to do that kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I would say to young people, still make yourself ready. Still look for opportunities to serve. And if you don't want to come back at 10 o'clock at night, that's your call. But don't miss the principle in that story. Add value. Make yourself ready for the next opportunity. If you're not ready, I don't think you're going to get the call.
But I think something that you said is huge, and then we'll talk about how you went to 1 million books, because I got to know that story. What I noticed is that you were always willing to go above and beyond the call of duty. And your ability to do that was recognized and got you the opportunity.
Well, you follow sports.
Yeah.
And you got some people who are naturally gifted.
Yeah.
That would not be me. But you got athletes out there, and they got something else, and I call it hustle. And I decided early, man, I'm gonna do everything I can to make up for what I don't have. and I'm gonna give it my best. I'm gonna give it my all, and again, trust God for the outcome, right? But I'm not gonna give it 70 or 80%.
Right. You give it 110.
I'm gonna give it
every
110.
time. Woo! All right, 1 million books sold. Talk to us about that, because you have a unique situation here. You run the leadership kind of thing here at Chick-fil-A,
right?
But you also write books for Chick-fil-A in a sense, or for the development of operators, or just in general. I mean, how does all that relationship work?
It's hard to explain. How long is this show? So let me go back and give you the beginning of the story, and then we'll try to move into present day. We were trying to figure out how to accelerate leadership development. We needed more leaders faster. I don't know what your listeners do, but when we have a problem to be solved or an opportunity to be seized, we generally put a leader on it, on either one of those things. Woo. And so we looked over our shoulder and realized, this was about 20 years ago, literally about 20 years ago, we looked over our shoulder. We had real problems to be solved and real opportunities to be seized. And we said, our leadership bench is not as strong as it needs to be. There were even some parts of the business we didn't even have a leadership bench.
Wow.
We were talking about, we hope this person can do it in a few years and this person may become a great leader at some point in the future.
Yeah.
And so I was asked to see if we could accelerate leadership development. And so I did what you might do in a similar circumstance. I put together a team of really smart people. And I said, guess what we get to do? We get to figure this out. And in the process, we had come up with some ideas that we weren't quite sure they were right. I actually call it a crisis of confidence because we sell chicken.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we're in water we've not been in before.
Right.
I mean, that's the way I felt.
Yeah.
And so it was either a coincidence or divine appointment. You can decide. I was going to be with Ken Blanchard the next day, and he's a personal friend of mine, and he's a friend of Chick-fil-A, and he'd spoken before, and again, we're longtime friends. So I asked the team, I said, would you like me to share the work we've done with Ken and see if we can get some validation or some redirection? Because we've been working on this for longer than I'm going to admit.
Right.
I mean, we've been working on this. We had already turned the calendar to another year.
Right,
We'd been on this for months.
On this journey.
But we had a point of view. And so they said, oh, that'd be fantastic. Why don't you share it with Ken? And so the next day I was with Ken. I had an outline, 1 sheet of paper, 5 bullet points. And I said, Ken, we've been trying to figure out how to accelerate leadership development at Chick-fil-A. I'd like you to take a look at this. Tell me if you think it's true. Do you think it's valid? Do you think it'll stand the test of time? And have we missed anything? And I handed him this 1 sheet of paper. And he looked at it, and the first thing out of his mouth, this has got to be a book. Well, I blew him off, and I said, Ken, everything looks like a book to you, which is why he sold about 70 million books, right? I said, you don't understand. I said, is it true? Is it valid? Will it stand the test of time, or did we miss anything? He said, you don't understand. And I said, okay, what is it I don't understand? He said, you were trying to articulate what great leaders do at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
He said, what you've done is you've articulated what great leaders have done throughout history. And it has to be a book.
It has to be a book.
So he planted that seed. Again, fast forward the story, I went to our executive committee and said, Ken Blanchard has got this crazy idea. What do you guys think? They discussed it, debated it. They came back to me and they said, why don't you do that book with Ken? They said, maybe it will serve the world.
Wow.
Now, none of us had any clue that book, which went on to become The Secret, What Great Leaders Know and Do, is now in 25 languages. So when they said maybe it would serve the world, it in fact has. And so that kind of started my writing career, although I still say I'm the accidental author because I had no intent nor desire to do that. And then what has happened over time is we have realized that the books do serve a broader leadership community, but they also serve the Chick-fil-A community.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to write out of our experiences when we're trying to codify our point of view on what makes a great team. We studied teams for over 20 years. So I was approached by leaders here and said, can you write down what we've learned?
Yeah.
And I said, I guess so. And so that became The Secret of Teams. And
Wow.
then we wrote, we've done several. I won't
tell us.
review
No,
them all.
we need them. We need them.
No,
we
but
need
I
them.
will say,
Yeah.
Leaders Made Here is the story of us trying to create a leadership culture. And so it basically just chronicles what we have learned and many of the mistakes we've made, some of the lessons, some of the insights. And all of these are written in a very, hopefully, approachable form. They're a business fable. They're short. They're succinct. They're direct. The characters are pretty thin. There's not a lot of story there.
Yeah.
You know, they're kind of a vehicle to deliver content. But what we found is that because of the style and the format, a lot of people will read them and they'll share them. And so I'm continuing to write books that serve not only the greater leadership community, but they do serve some of our restaurants as well.
Let's talk about the style and format of how you write, because
Okay.
this is amazing. We're going to talk about Win the Heart in a second. This is his new book. You got to go get it. How to Create a Culture of Full Engagement. The last book was Talent Management. Am I right?
Talent Magnet.
Magnet. Ooh, I got to get, there it is. Talent Magnet. I saw that in the airport. It was on a wall. It was like marks everywhere. Talk to us about how you write. Why do you write that way? It's like, are they fables or what?
Yeah, so I guess I should tell you the truth. I hate to lie to you here on camera. So here's the true story.
Okay.
When Ken and I decided to do that very first book,
Yeah.
again, he came up with the idea. I pushed back. I said, let me call you. Let me think about it. Let me pray about it. Let me get back to you. So I thought about it for a while, and I called him, and I said, Ken, if we were going to do a book, how would we do it? He said, well, if we're going to do a book, he said, we only got two options. And I'm new, and I'm green, and I'm going, this is 20 years ago, and I'm going, okay,
He sold thousands
what are
of
our,
books,
he
right.
sold millions of books.
Millions.
I said, what are our two
Yeah.
options? He said, either you can write the first draft, or we can hire somebody to write the first draft. Because at that point in his career, he was co-authoring with a lot of people, but he wasn't doing first drafts.
Right.
And so I said, okay, let me get back to you. And so I went and thought about it, and I said, I don't know if I've got one book in me or a dozen, but I don't think I want my first one done by a ghostwriter. So all due respect to those men and women, I think I'll take a shot at it. So I wrote the first draft, sent it to him. He called and was just over the top, congratulatory in tone and spirit.
Yeah,
He's
like,
just
you killed it, right?
He didn't go that far.
Okay.
Congratulations. First
Yeah.
draft's the hardest draft. I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. He said, there's only one problem. I said, what's that? He said, I don't like it. I said, okay. I said, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I sell chicken for a living.
Right.
I said, so what do we do now?
Yeah.
And he said, I guess we're going to have to bring in another writer. And I said, okay, if that's what's required. I said, but before we do, tell me what you don't like about it. He said, well, it reminds me of my early work. And I said, thank you very much. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, your recent stuff's not selling that well. I did. I told him. And he said, well, I'm doing a little more elaborate stories, a little more in-depth character development. I said, I know. And I decided to pattern it stylistically after your most successful book, which was The 1 Minute Manager. I said, the characters are paper thin. They're just a vehicle to deliver content. And he got real quiet on the phone. He said, send me 30 copies. And I said, okay. And I hung up and I thought, how do you do that?
Yeah.
So I went to Kinko's and said, can you make me 30 copies of this?
Right.
And I put them in a box and I shipped them off to him. 4 months go by. I don't hear a word, which is fine because I'm selling chicken, right?
Right.
I mean,
You're like,
I'm not a
I'm doing my
writer.
thing.
I'm
Yeah.
doing my thing. So he calls me 4 months later and he says, Mark, congratulations. And I said, for what? He said, the book. I said, what about it? He said, people love it. I said, they do. He said, they love it. I said, what do they like about it?
Yeah.
He said, they're telling me it reminds them of my early work. So that's how I got into that style.
Oh my
And
gosh.
Ken and I have done a second book, and then I've done another half dozen on my own. And we just find that it makes the content approachable. The simple story, the simple character, the simple truth in a short page count. We think that's a pretty powerful combination. So for the foreseeable future, this is my style, although I will tell you, I've not said this publicly before,
Exclusive.
the new book that's coming next year, I got one coming out.
You have a title for that?
Well, I got a book coming out in a week,
Which is Win the Heart,
which is Win the Heart.
which probably will be out by the time this
And then
comes out.
I've got a new one for 2020, but it's the 5th in this series. After that, I'm actually thinking of experimenting with even shorter books because I think that's where the world is headed.
Yeah.
So I know
Yeah.
Seth Godin and others have done Tribes and Poke the Box and The Dip and some of these very, very succinct and powerful. So I was in a conversation this week. I may try that after the next book.
So what's Win the Heart about?
Win the Heart's about engagement.
Ooh, talk about that.
Well, here,
And talk about Talent Magnet because that is brilliant. When you can.
when I can. Well, so let me tell you, this is all a series. Maybe
Okay.
maybe to set it up like that, and I'll do this quickly. We started studying high-performance organizations almost 10 years ago. Now, before that, we were trying to help our restaurants and other leaders around the world understand the power of teams and help them build what we call high-performance teams. Because you know this about teams. Some teams flourish, most flounder. And we said, we want to figure out how do you create elite teams. And so we worked on that for more than a decade. And then we began to ask ourselves, what's after you create an elite team? Because in our case, we were doing that around leadership teams. And there's huge power in a leadership team.
Yeah.
But the truth is, there are a whole lot of men and women that don't sit on the leadership team.
Yeah.
So we said, what would it take to create an organization that could harness the talent, the energy, the passion, and the creativity of all the folks that don't sit on the leadership team, which is, in many organizations, 90% of the people
Right.
aren't on a leadership team.
Right.
And we called that a high-performance organization.
That's right.
Conceptually. The problem is we didn't know how to build one. So we spent about 5 years studying high-performance organizations.
What were some of the organizations?
Well, some of the organizations, the Navy SEALs, the world champion sailing, America's Cup sailing team, businesses that you would expect. And since then, we spent time with Apple and Zappos and Starbucks and the Mayo Clinic and on and on and on and on and on and on and on.
Okay. Wow.
Dozens of organizations. And we spent time with a lot of Chick-fil-A operators that do a really good job at what they do. So back to this storyline that started in 2010, we started trying to figure out how do you build a high-performance organization. We shared our findings on that in 2015 in a book called Chess Not Checkers. And it outlined 4 things that all high-performance organizations have in common. And so what we're now doing is I'm doing a book on each of those, which is why I say there's one more in the series, which comes out next year.
Okay.
So we're really trying to help our leaders, our readers, go deep on each of these moves. And so that's the story. We're now on engagement, which is the 3rd move. All high-performance organizations win the heart. You can't build a high-performance organization with a disengaged workforce, which is a blinding flash of the obvious. But if you believe Gallup's numbers, 2/3 of the American workforce is not engaged by their own admission. And so is it any wonder you don't see more high-performance organizations? You can't be a high-performance organization if people don't care.
They don't care. Yeah,
And so
right.
this book is about strategies and tactics to help people care more. We want them to care about their work, to care about their co-workers, and to care about the organization. And when they care more, they'll perform better. And I think we as leaders are better stewards of those men and women as human beings. When we create a workplace where they can thrive, where they can flourish, where they can be the best version of themselves, that's what this book is about.
So without giving the book away, how do you make them care?
Without giving the book away, how do you make them care?
Give me just one thing, just one. Don't give us all.
Well,
You need to go get the book.
there's
to
a
get-
story.
To get 'em
No,
all.
I don't mind giving the book away.
But don't give it all away.
There's a story. There's a story in the book that I think summarizes it for me, and it was actually the working title for the book. No hired hands. If a leader can,
boom, boom,
if a
boom.
leader can embrace that idea, because when you just hire a man's hands, a woman's hands, you forfeit the head and the heart.
Woo.
And so I've been told before that you're supposed to write a book backwards. I mean, I've been hearing that my whole life.
Yeah.
At least the last 20 years I've been writing. I never understood what that meant.
Right.
I kind of did this one that way because I said that's the big idea. Now, how do you keep people from becoming hired hands? You think about all those folks just going through the motions. Some of them have quit and they just still on your payroll. Right? And so let me give you 4 quick things.
Yeah, please.
One,
You're dropping
and
gems.
I call these cornerstones.
Yeah.
These are, think of them like levers you can pull. Somebody says, do I have to do all of this? You don't have to do any of this.
Right.
But if you want to create the maximum context for care to flourish, there are 4 levers to pull. There are 4 cornerstones. The first one is connection. Do people feel connected? And there are many, many, many things you can do tactically. But if someone is not connected, almost by definition, they're not going to care, right? And that's really, let me say this, that's our working definition for engagement. There's a lot written on engagement. There's some pretty good stuff out there, but much of it is academic and it's theoretical. And we tried to shuck it down and say, okay, what is engagement? Engagement is how much somebody cares. If you don't care at all, you're disengaged, and if you care a lot, you're highly engaged. So the first cornerstone is connection. How can you foster connection? And your imagination can run wild on that. An example I just gave our restaurant operators at our event we just returned from was, what do you do in orientation? Are you thinking enough about how you onboard someone? What are the stories you tell them? How much time do you invest? Who does the orientation? Do they begin to establish a connection? Or I might even say deepen a connection, because hopefully that connection began even in the interview process.
Right.
So connection is the first. Affirmation. Do people feel affirmed? If you're affirmed, you're going to care more, right? I mean, I hate that this is, I hate this is so simple. I'm glad it's not complicated. What it requires is a leader and leaders to be disciplined. And so we're going to create a place where people are connected. We're going to create a place where people are affirmed. Again, as simple as this sounds, how often do your employees hear you as the leader say thank you? Like a genuine, authentic, heartfelt thank you. I see you, I see your work, I see your contribution. Could be revolutionary. Connection, affirmation, responsibility. Now, I know you, and I know the people listening. If you are responsible for something, you care more about it. It's kind of like, I'm kind of going, again, I feel like this is...
It's simple, but yet
But if
not
you miss
common.
if you miss it, that's why 2/3 of the American workforce is disengaged, right? That's why they're not engaged at work. And so, are you giving people real responsibility? And you either are or you aren't.
Wow.
And I'm not just talking about tasks. I mean, there's some responsibility in a task, but what if I gave you responsibility for a decision? What if I gave you responsibility for an outcome? How much more do you care?
Right.
See, we're trying to drive care. Connection, affirmation, responsibility. And the fourth cornerstone is the environment that you create. Now, somebody said, well, is that a catch-all? Well, not intentionally. The environment's a real thing.
Right.
I mean, it's a real thing. And it has physical components, and it has emotional components, it has psychological components. Is this a place where people feel safe physically, which most workplaces would check? That's good. Is it a place where they feel safe psychologically and emotionally? And are they willing to take a risk? Is it a place they're actually equipped? That's an environmental factor. Is it a place where they have the tools and resources they need? You want to drive somebody's level of caring down? Ask them to do something they don't know how to do. I mean, right?
Right.
Ask them to do something they don't have the tools and resources to do. It's kind of another blinding flash of the obvious. But when you put those four together, connection, affirmation, responsibility, and environment, CARE, care produces caring. And caring is engagement. And engagement is that last hurdle to become a high-performance organization, because all high-performance organizations excel at execution. They deliver the goods. That's what that next book's about. They deliver the goods. And people who don't care if they deliver the goods. which is why you experience some products and services and they're not right. It's because the people don't care. So that's what this book's about. And they just all got it. They don't have to read it. They just all got it. That's all there is to it.
They got to read it. No, they got to.
They don't have to read it.
There's some stories.
Now, I will
there's
say
some
this.
details.
I will say this.
Buy it for your teams.
I will say this about the books. I've given all my profits away for 20 years, and I'll continue to do that. So if they do buy the books, if any of that money trickles my way, then I give that money away. So that makes me feel a little bit better about kind of promoting the books. I'm so thankful to have a day job, and I do this to serve leaders, and so if you buy them, that's good, and if you don't, that's fine too. But We'll take care of orphans in Africa and dig wells around the world. We'll do all kind of good stuff with any money that comes my way.
Well, I want to tell them to buy the book.
Well, go ahead.
You need to buy the book. And let me tell you why people need to buy the book and the entire series, because they need it. I spend a lot of time with leaders and organizations and churches and corporate, they're struggling with this stuff. Mm-hmm. And the best leaders are going, how do we solve these problems? Mm-hmm. And they cannot find the answer. Sure, we got a bunch of podcasts and
right,
but not everybody's listening to a podcast.
Sure.
Your entire team isn't listening to a podcast. How do we get this stuff in them?
Well, let me say one more thing about that. When you read
Yeah.
the book, if you are a leader trying to solve this problem and others, my books may disappoint you.
Okay.
So let me lay it out there for you, because as a new author, I guess I can't say that anymore. But when I was a new author, when I was a new author,
Yeah.
my publisher was telling me that I am a prisoner of my genre. And I said, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
And he said, you got to take all this stuff out of your books. He said, you put too much content in your books. He
Yeah.
said, the way, if you put all this stuff in your books, you can guarantee nobody's going to buy it, nobody's going to read it. He said, you're not writing a field guide. So my first several manuscripts, we took 75% of the content out after I sent the manuscripts to the publisher. And so now we create field guides because people want the tactics, but a 100-page parable is not really the place to put a bunch of tactics. Like even in my team's book, we talk about how important it is for a team to have an effective meeting. Well, in my first draft, I had all these do's and don'ts for effective meetings. The publisher said, get all that out of there. So now the do's and don'ts for effective meetings are in the field guide. Same is true on this. We give some examples and illustrations because we want people to understand it, make it tangible, but we've got a field guide with 150, 250, I don't know how many ideas that you'll not find here because this is not the right format. So if you're looking for a lot of tactics, the field guide would be a better place to turn.
So they got to get the books and they got to get the field tactic. No, field guide. There it is. So they can get the tactics.
If you need the tactics.
They need it.
But you can make them up yourself. There are a lot of leaders, when they get a concept or a principle, they can create their own tactics. And that's great. But there are other leaders, and that's just the way they're wired. They appreciate the principle, but they want to know what's the practice. And so if you're one of those leaders, we've created resources to help with that.
Well, they need it. We have a predominantly Christian audience, and we've got folks that want to glorify God with their gifts and their abilities. They want to be good stewards over the influence they have. And these are some of the issues they're dealing with. Two more sections and we're done with the interview.
I'm not sure we got time for two more sections. I'll talk fast.
Okay.
They'll have to listen fast.
Right.
I'll talk fast.
Quick. We just, as we turn the corner here and come to an end, your relationship with God. What many people may not know, maybe they do, is that you also preach on the side.
I don't preach very often. Well, my wife might disagree with that. From time to time, I will be asked to teach in a church setting.
How does your relationship with God inform your business practices and your leadership?
They're inseparable. They're inseparable. Tell you a quick story. I do a limited number of speaking engagements. I have a day job, but I was speaking for a construction company, secular organization. I don't know, ballroom full of people. And at the end of my talk, when I finished, my host stood up and said, "And we've got time for Q&A." And I went, he looked at me and said, "Is that good with you?" And I'm going, "Sure."
Yeah.
So the first question from the floor, someone stood up and they said, "You're different." I remember waiting, and I said, "Is there a question in there?" And he said, "What makes you tick?" And I kind of took a deep breath, and I looked down at the front row, and my host, sensing perhaps my hesitation, said, "Answer the man's question." And I said, "I really don't work for Chick-fil-A." And there was this
Hush.
not even a gasp in the room. It's like, he's an imposter. And I went on to tell him about Colossians chapter 3 and that I don't work for man. I work for God. And so for me, it's hard to separate. Now, Chick-fil-A has been gracious over the years to give me a paycheck, an education in many, many ways, and a platform for influence, but I don't work for Chick-fil-A. And I think who you work for changes everything. Doesn't make it, there's still hard days, right? It doesn't make the problems go away, but it helps me with my personal orientation. That there's an audience of one, that at the end of the day, that is who I must serve.
As we end, my last question is, for those that are listening going, I'm struggling with how to do that, how to work for God, but yet be in the corporate field that can be ugly at times. And I want mine to overlap. I don't want to separate them, but I'm struggling. And then here's what we know. I remember asking Dan Cathy once, how do you create a Christian business, a successful Christian business?
And he said, we're not a Christian business.
Right.
He said, we're a business that is built on biblical principles. Truett used to tell us that he could find no conflict between biblical principles and good business principles. And so even things such as our views and philosophy on hospitality, well, second mile service comes right out of the book of Matthew, right? When you're asked by Jesus said, when you're asked to go 1 mile, to willingly go a second mile. That's where the relationship is built, not when you're under obligation. And so we have just said we believe that biblical principles are not in conflict with good business principles. Now, that doesn't answer the harder question that I didn't let you get to is how do you do this day to day? And I don't have an easy answer, because I know there are a lot of people that are in much more hostile environments than we are. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that. But I would just ask you to reaffirm who you're working for. What's your calling? And ask God to help you live your calling in your current context. Because He's preparing you for something. He's either preparing you for influence where you are or influence at a later time. I believe all of our life is preparation. As long as we're here, God's preparing us for something. And so when I'm in a hard spot, even in this context, one of my first questions, I can't tell you it's my first question, but one of my first questions is, what am I supposed to learn here? How can this experience, how can this challenge, how can this difficulty, how can this setback make me better in the future? I'll even write down some of these lessons that I'm going to need them later, and I don't want God to have to teach me again.
Yeah.
So, affirm your calling. Try to figure out what God is teaching you as He prepares you.
Can you pray for us?
I'd be delighted to.
Yeah.
God, thanks for today. Thanks for Sam. Thanks for his friendship and his influence in my life and the lives of so many others. I just pray that you'll help the audience today find and feel your presence in a supernatural way. Even when it's hard, God, help them cling to you, understanding that you set the model for us and that great leaders always attempt to serve. And at the end of the day, we'll give you all the credit and all the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks so much for tuning in to A Greater Story with Sam Collier and the Vice President of High Performance Leadership at Chick-fil-A and an international best-selling author, Mark Miller. I'm so excited that we get to do this. I'm honored. Go get his new book, Win the Heart, and get the next one, then get the one before that and the one before that. And remember this, when your story connects to God's story, it leads to a greater story. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, man.
Ready.